And so now I would like to welcome our speaker today for this presentation. We have Dennis Todey, who is the director for the Midwest Climate Hub. So please join me in welcoming Dennis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for having me virtually. We were just chatting before we were going along about, missing seeing people face to face, but it is very, very nice to be able to jump out to a conference like this without having the travel time across the Midwest. So I appreciate being here. I am the director of the USDA Midwest Climate Hub. We are an entity of USDA that is dealing with changing climate issues and overall issues related to climate and agriculture. We're going to talk more about things as we're going along. Just a bit more about me. I'm originally an Iowan, so I'm back in Iowa now. We're based out of Ames, Iowa. Our lab is on the campus of Iowa State. I'm not on campus right now, as you can see, since we're still on full telework. I have degrees in meteorology and ag meteorology for my PhD, and I spent 13 years as the state climatologist in South Dakota. So I work a lot through that community and with extension and in that community, and we'll talk about those as we go along. As Heather mentioned, I would like this to be as informal as we can be, since it's pretty small. I really would like some back and forth. I have some questions I'm going to pose to you to find a little bit more about yourselves. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. There we go. Here we go. As I'm going through the introduction, what I'd like you to do is in the chat, put your general location, where you're from, and a little bit about what agriculture you do, either crops or livestock or whatever. And if there's any other questions you have up front, feel free to ask those in there too. So go ahead and put those in the chat so I can kind of get a background on who we're dealing with here. A little more about me. Again, originally an Iowan, married and have 4 kids, 3 of whom gone through Iowa State, and 1 is in South Dakota. My career has been all about doing climate and agriculture related issues. So good to see folks putting stuff in the chat. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. Extreme rain events. Marty, yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of those issues too. And if there's, again, if there's anything along the way that you'd like to talk more about and pose questions about or find out more about, please do share that. I'd like to hear about that along the way. I know you're getting your money's worth by what we're trying to do here. So go ahead and keep putting those in about where you are and what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to back up one slide here. What we're going to do in our official presentation, and again, the questions you have can help guide our conversation today too. Give you a little more background about the climate hubs, and then talk about some issues with climate change. Since I did talk about tools, I'm going to try to share some tools that are available, but I'm also going to find out what tools you'd like to see or things you need to see that would help you deal with the changing climate issues. And then talk about a brief bit about the growing season for 2021 or 2022. We're in 2022 now. So, okay, Columbus, graduate student, vegetable crops, food and vegetable crops, cattle, vegetable farming. Okay, that helps me gauge. And Southern California. Okay, I think you win the farthest from being the farthest away, even beating me in this one. So. And federal ag policy. Unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about policy because I sit in a part of USDA called the Ag Research Service. We don't deal with policy issues. We're actually forbidden from dealing with policy issues. I've got to pass you on to other folks, but we're going to talk about the science, what we know, and some of our activities, how we're dealing with the wide range of issues. So keep those chats coming along the way. I'd love to see that. Okay. A little bit about the hubs, brief history. These have been around since 2014. They were started under the Obama administration and Secretary Vilsack when his first time around, when all federal agencies were starting to get into, you need to deal with climate. How are we going to deal with climate? So these were spun up. There are 10 hubs nationally. There's been some jiggering around of how these were developed. actually, so there end up 10 hubs now. They're all considered equal. We cover an 8-state region in the Midwest, what we consider the Midwest anyway, from Minnesota down to Missouri and Michigan to Ohio. We do extend kind of into Kentucky due to some other connections we have, and because we are the main part of the corn soybean growing area, and we do deal with those, we extend part of our work into the Northern Plains, because the Northern Plains hub tends to focus more on rangeland issues and livestock issues. So we cover a bit more than our region. We're also a different region because you're actually served by 2 hubs. There is a Forest Service based hub out of Houghton, Michigan, and I don't know if I mentioned, we're out of Ames, Iowa. It's called the National Laboratory for Agriculture and the Environment. The other hub that serves our region is the Northern Forest Hub based out of Houghton, Michigan, and they deal with forestry issues in our region. So if you need to deal with anything with forestry, we're going to route you to them to talk about things. The rest of agriculture falls to us in our region. Okay, just briefly, this is structural. We deal with, we report in 3 kind of areas: assessments and syntheses, kind of coming up with new information; outreach and education, this would fall under that area; and technical support, working through other parts of USDA and other agencies. So briefly, how we work in these areas. We publish peer-reviewed literature. We also work in journals that are the trade journals, appropriate trade journals as necessary. So we work through those. The National Climate Assessment we're going to talk about a bit. There's information drawn from the last National Climate Assessment. We're part of working on the next National Climate Assessment now. We do a lot of work because of my background in extension and as a state climatologist, and work with a lot of partners in trying to share information for people to use. We do those through working with other extension partners, other land grant partners, other NGOs, other federal agencies, state agencies, whoever it is, whoever's willing to work with us, we are happy to. We are a relatively small entity. We just hired a new coordinator after a previous coordinator left, and those are our only 2 full-time employees right now. We are hopefully going to be expanding as we're going along here, but that's the status of who we deal with right now. So I'm going to show links at the bottom of some of the other things, some of the other partners, publications of things that we do. And then our technical support, just kind of overall. We deal with as wide a range of agriculture as we can cover in the region. I mentioned corn and soybeans. They cover a large number of acres, so we deal with corn and soy. And if we're trying to get practices implemented, we can cover a lot of acres in corn and soy if we can get that adapted. But we also realize there are a wide range of other specialty crops which have a different set of issues that we're dealing with. And those crops don't have the crop insurance support that corn and soy do, and they have a different set of problems that we're trying to deal with that are even more directly affected by weather and climate. This question Steve asked is the Midwest Climate Hub a post-Trump administration? We were formed under the previous under the Obama administration. Changed a little bit during the Trump administration, and now things have changed again with the current administration, and we're kind of waiting for some policy changes. We're continuing to hear new policy changes that have come out. There was just one this week on that Vilsack was using the Commodity Credit Corporation to do grants for dealing with climate smart agriculture. So we're moving now into a different realm, and then we're waiting for new budgets now to see what additional things are supported in the way of those new budgets. So again, a wide range of agriculture, food crops up in your area and around the Great Lakes, a whole different set of issues and related to those compared to the other ones. We like to even joke, with your pumpkin pie, you like where your pumpkin pie comes from. Does anybody know where the pumpkin probably came from for your pumpkin pie, for that canned pumpkin? Anyone want to take a shot at that one? No? Okay. More than likely, that pumpkin came from central Illinois, around the Peoria, Morton, Illinois area. About 85-ish% of the canned pumpkin from the country comes from that one location. So it is affected by weather and climate too. That's how I found out about this. About 7 years ago, they became very wet one summer, and the pumpkin production was reduced quite a bit because of wetness and disease issues. So a wide range of issues that we have throughout our region. Again, we work with a ton of partners, with other USDA agencies, other land grants, non-USDA agencies, NOAA, other federal partners. We work whoever we can to try to share weather and climate information and materials that can help people understand what's happening and what they can use to make some decisions. So I'm going to jump. This is from a slide I stole from a recent presentation we did. It was an internal USDA presentation on climate change in agriculture. There were 4 of us that did it, and it's a very wordy slide, but I think it summarized things really well. Climate change effects are already happening in forest, food systems, other agricultural systems. We're already being impacted by the effects of climate change. There's no questions about that. Some of them are going to continue. Some of them are going to be slower to show up. And so we have to continue adapting to the current conditions and hopefully mitigate the future conditions over what's going on here. We can maintain agricultural production, but we have to adapt to changing conditions and deal with those, and to deal with those. And that's part of what we are trying to do, and what we have to do with the Midwest Climate Hub is help agriculture deal with these changing climate conditions and hopefully mitigate future conditions. So I'm going to pause here for just a second. Are there any questions anybody has at this point, or thoughts that they want to bring up? You can always put things in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand or unmute, we'll happily take them verbally.
Are you going to go into climate smart agriculture later?
We are going to dabble with a few things. The range of climate smart agriculture issues is large enough right now. We're trying to get our handle around some of the issues related to it. There are a number of practices that are considered climate smart, but that's, some of these things are newly developing. So we're trying to get our head around from the policy standpoint as well as some of the scientific standpoints. Do you have specific questions about any of them?
Oh, just different groups have been talking about climate smart agriculture. I think there's solutions for the land. It's a national group that's been proposing climate smart agriculture. Ohio has a climate smart agriculture initiative that's pretty much stopped because of COVID. I'm not sure where it is, but I was just wondering what specific methods or what the definitions was of climate smart agriculture.
Sure. You're right. Solutions for the Land, and we've done some work with them, have done a number of different things related to climate smart agriculture. A lot of it is focused around soils, taking care of soils and using soils as a carbon sequestration effort. That there are other greenhouse gas related things, reducing some of the greenhouse gas issues, but also adapting different crops to these different scenarios. So that was what I was mentioning earlier, is just on Monday this week, Secretary Vilsack announced a grant opportunity for people to work on developing climate smart practices and implementing them, but then also evaluating them. How good are they? What do they do? From a greenhouse gas standpoint, from a yield standpoint, they want to know about these things. It's a fairly aggressive timeline. They're going to be there's a first round of these going to be released, and they're it's $5 billion or more is what's going to be happening, and that's part of, and this is really good, because that's one of the concerns that questions I've had is there's a lot of climate smart practices, considered climate smart practices, but we don't know the total effect, the total evaluation of them to be able to say, when when you folks as producers are trying to implement new practices and want to try to do things, what are the best ones? What are the best ones for you? And it's not going to be the same for everyone. So we're still trying to get a handle on these ideas too. So there's going to be more to come on that. So Marty asks, do we do rainfall predictions? That rainfall predictions is one of the toughest issues related to looking ahead. We don't do predictions ourselves. I'm going to talk about a product that we do create, which is called our Midwest Ag Outlook Focus. I can't remember the title. I'm drawing a blank on it now, where we take other outlooks from NOAA, National Weather Service, and some other products and put them into a couple-page summary. We do this about once a month, a bit more often during the summertime, to talk about what's going on and what's coming up ahead, to be able to make some decisions or at least to assess what your situation is. So I'll talk about that as we go along. I also have a few slides at the end here about where we are right now and what we're looking at for the beginning of the growing season, if we get to that and people are interested in that. So good questions, keep them coming. Okay, we're going to dive into a few of the, a few of the summary issues related to climate change issues. Again, part of what we've been trying to do so far is reminding people what some of the issues are, how agriculture is being impacted by direct climate influences, what things are changing in the climate because that are impacting agriculture, and then some of the things that are happening in agriculture. I'm going to give you some links. The other thing I should mention is almost everything I have in here is publicly available from websites. So you can do snapshots along the way of the links, or you can, if you want at the end, I can send this out to anyone who'd like this, and you can grab the URLs from there. That's part of what we try to do, is get information for people to find out. So a couple things. These are from the last National Climate Assessment. This is a congressionally mandated report, and it's not small. It's huge. That was released in 2018. The next one is in process right now. Okay, Sue, well, thank you. We'll try to get that to you at the end here. The next National Climate Assessment is being put into place. We're gathering, and actually, if you want to have input on the next National Climate Assessment, you still have an opportunity right now. We had some public engagement sessions that just happened where you could give verbally, but you can also give public comment right now to the drafts of what is going on. And I'm on the Midwest chapter, which is we're talking partially about ag, but water and other issues related in the Midwest. So that's what's in process right now. So I don't have the link to that. If you want the link to that, I can try to find that for you for doing public engagement. Or you can just go to the National Climate Assessment, and you can, I'm sure, find the public engagement at that point. Okay, some of the issues that we are dealing with, bigger events, more extreme kinds of issues, bigger disasters. We continue to have a number of them. The graphic on the lower right-hand side is from our partners with NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, on the billion-dollar disasters from 1981 to 2021. And these are cost adjusted, so you're comparing apples to apples. On the left-hand side is the number of events, and on the right-hand side is the cost in billions of these. And you can see the increasing level of intensity. And then the colors are related to different types of events. The greens are, the greens are quickly severe weather events. The yellows are tropical cyclones. Drought kind of gets misplaced because it's counted as one each year, even though much of the western U.S. is under major drought. So things like the derecho that impacted Iowa 2 years, or last summer of 2020, was a major agricultural and tree issue around the region. And on the left-hand side was the opposite side. Marty mentioned about increasingly heavy rain events. The classic or 2019, spring of 2019, these are RMA crop indemnities, indemnities paid out from the USDA Risk Management Agency, and the darkest brown areas are over $10 million per county. And you can see a lot of places, a lot in the plains because of wetness in the spring and people unable to plant. Northwest Ohio was one of those places. Oddly enough, Northwest Ohio had their record earliest last spring freeze. So you'd think you should be able to plant, but we're unable to plant because of excessively wet conditions. So those are the kinds of things that we continue to deal with on a widespread basis. We are getting warmer overall. This is a graphic from the last National Climate Assessment up on the upper right-hand side. The reddest, and this is data for the last, since the beginning of the 20th century, essentially. The reddest areas are increasing temperatures by over 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And then on the bottom, winter, and you see differences in winter and summer. Winter temperatures are driving more of the warming, and also overnight lows. I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. Summers overall, the warming is different, and not as much warming in the summertime as you see during the cold season, and that's leading to things like increasing our frost-free period, our last spring freeze getting earlier, our first fall freeze getting later, so it's increasing our growing season. That's presenting another set of issues I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, but it is also giving an opportunity for people who want to use longer season crops or do double cropping or something along those lines. And I'm not saying that climate change is a good thing, but there are some things that we can do in agriculture to take advantage of the changes while trying to adapt to some of the downsides, which there are plenty of them to deal with. Here's a graphic that this is for Ohio and showing you summertime. The graph on the top, and what we're giving you here, what we're showing you, the one on the top is Ohio average high temperatures for the summer, and summer is June, July, August. So the x-axis you may not be able to see, but this is these are each of those dots is a year since 1895 until the present. So that is the average temperature, average high temperature for that year. For the summer. On the bottom is the average low temperature, and then there's a line in there indicating what the trend is. So there's a lot of variability in high temperatures, but there's a slight downward trend in the average highs during the summertime. But if you look at the average lows during the summertime, it's getting warmer. So our daytime highs, we don't have as hot at daytime highs as much, but we have a lot more warm nights. That's a whole different set of issues of warming than warming in the high temperatures. So that's a lot of what we are seeing, and we'll talk about some of the issues as we go along. Some of those issues lead to, it helps to expand our growing season again, but it changes our phenology. It pushes some crops more quickly through some phenology stages because of the warming temperatures, which can lead to yield loss. It can also lead to some changing insect issues. Here's another tool if you grow corn. This is a tool that indicates the number of growing degree days and compares them to average. This is a tool we developed from a previous project that has sunsetted, but the tool is still going on. You can go to, and that bottom link is wrong because I have to change that bottom link now because the Midwest Regional Climate Center has moved from the University of Illinois to Purdue. So I apologize. The top link should still work at the other High Plains Regional Climate Center. The other side that Marty brought up and other people, if you talk about what they're being impacted by weather and climate, tend to talk about wetness, lots of wetness, and definitely that's a problem. This is a similar graphic to the one I showed you for temperature. Precipitation changes that have occurred, again, since the beginning of the 20th century. The areas that are greener are seeing a bigger increase in precipitation. The darkest green are greater than 15% increase in precipitation. So Ohio is not seeing as much of an increase as some of the other areas to the east, but it's already a wet area. So you think about a wet-ish area and you make it wetter, that adds to, that really changes how we deal with what's going on in agriculture. And the thing that we do point out particularly is when it's not only the amount of precipitation, but it's when it's occurring during the year. Down at the bottom, we've got graphics that show the change in winter, and winter here is December, January, February. Spring is March, April, May. Summer is June, July, August, and fall is September, October, November. That a lot of our wetness increase is in the spring and fall periods. Not as much in Ohio as some of the other areas, but when you think about agriculture, those are times when we're doing a lot in the field in the way of being in there in the spring and fall, which causes a lot more problems in the way of field compaction, disease issues, planting, and all those kinds of things. Okay, now let's skip over this. We can go ahead. What that's leading to, and this is one of the big things when you're dealing with agriculture, is those issues from wetness, more flooding, field inundation. We see more precipitation intensity again during those off-season times, which leads to things like what we see below, the soil loss. So this is something that we encourage people to do, is to make sure they're managing their soils, using cover crops, reducing the tillage, anything that keeps the soil structure and reduces the ability for these increasing rains to cause runoff. The problem is we're getting bigger rainfalls, which even if you're doing right things, several inch rainfall events, unfortunately, will continue to cause soil loss in this issues. Is there drought? Yes, even in the midst of increasing precipitation, there is drought, and that's one of the issues that we've seen sometimes. Is you get wet in the spring and then you dry out midsummer, and this is another reason to take care of your soils, because they're your first line of defense at being able to maintain water in your field and being able to keep water available to your crops. Okay, let's pause here for a second. And I'll give you an opportunity if you want to ask any questions, please feel free. Or put in there, what kinds of weather and climate information do you currently use? What are things that you look at? What are things that help you, guide you in making decisions from a weather and climate standpoint? So you can put those in the chat, or if you want to just to raise your hand or shout out here. Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
So just to confirm what I thought I heard you say, the daytime highs aren't going up, but the nighttime highs are going up. Was that what your graph said?
Yeah, and that's specifically for the summertime.
For the summer. Okay.
Yeah, it does apply during other seasons. Like wintertime, we're seeing warming in both highs and lows. But particularly our summertime, our warming is being driven by overnight temperatures and not as much by daytime highs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, Marty, weather.gov. Yeah, that's a good source. That's a good source of information, especially in the way of forecasts. We like calling out our federal partners and pointing them out. So, anyone else have anything else that they use on a regular basis? Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question that came up for me, and I was just wondering, you mentioned that the government would pay money to farmers if there was like excessively wet conditions in the springtime, so they couldn't get their crops in the ground. Is that like specifically towards like larger scale like farmers, or do smaller operations or like market gardeners or like people like that, do they get access to those sorts of things?
That's a good question. Most of that refers to the main corn and soy areas, because corn and soy are and other big row crops are supported, and they have they buy crop insurance through providers that's underwritten by the risk management agency. So that is readily available to them. Small producers do have access to other crop insurance products. I think you would need to talk to your local farm service agency in your county to be able to check those out. The insurance products are different. They look different than those are for row crop, because the problem is, we can pretty easily tell, in a county roughly what an average yield should be for corn or soybeans or wheat or something like that. An average county yield for apples or grapes or something is not, is not something that's more readily available, or not readily available. USDA does realize there's a difference between those two, and they have in last several years tried to offer more available things through the Farm Service Agency. But I would contact your local Farm Service Agency to ask them questions about this. So, okay, and thanks, Marty, for putting that in. So, good questions. Are there any other questions we've got here?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead,
Yes,
John.
in Central Ohio here, we watch the television news weather forecasters multiple times during the day because many of our showers are very spotty, and that gives us a pinpoint of just where there's something going on. We make a lot of hay here, and I can have hay down, and 10 miles away, they'll have 2 inches of rain, and we'll be spared. You know, it's very spotty and irregular, and the television news has been a helpful source.
Good, good. Glad to hear that. And that's the weather.gov. If you look at that website, or you can get access on a phone, does give local radar that you can get an idea on where radar rains are occurring too. So, okay. Thanks for sharing. All right, anything else? Okay, I'm going to dive in on a couple other pieces here before, and these are, this is another USDA document that was created, it was released mid-year, I think July of 2021. And this was an attempt to look at more details about agriculture and details what's happening in the way of climate and agriculture, and trying to document them and create numbers to understand them. It's called Climate Indicators for Agriculture. You can again find this at the website. It's a nice document because it's written at a general public level. It talks about separate issues, and it does a couple pages on each one of those issues and connects you to some other resources around those. I was one of the authors on that, so I'm not taking great claim to that. We have a bunch of really intelligent people related to this, but it's a neat document, and I'm going to just touch on briefly a few of those that are related to some of the folks that you'd have here. So I encourage you to go have a look at it. We mentioned frost-free season changes with the warming winters. We are seeing a longer growing season, and you know that earlier last spring freeze, later first fall freeze is giving us some opportunities to take advantage of. We're actually, this is again a graphic from the last National Climate Assessment. It talks regionally about the increase in frost-free season change since the beginning of the 20th century. We're actually working with another partner, the Midwest Regional Climate Center. There's lots of these climate entities, yes, that it's kind of confusing. NOAA funds at the university, or at Purdue University, a Midwest Regional Climate Center. They deal with tools and data even more directly than we do. We're working with a tool so that people can see the frost-free season change near them. We're going to have a draft of that out within the next couple months, and we're going to share that widely once we get that available, so people can get a better idea of the frost-free season changes around them. We talked a bit about nighttime air temperatures. This is a common issue in a lot of places. These warm nights are becoming more frequent, and overall warm nights, but extremely warm nights, which again have phenology issues. They also have livestock issues or human health issues because we don't cool down enough at night. So if you got to have air conditioning, livestock need more management to deal with these overnight. Livestock can deal with short periods of high temperatures and high dew points, but these overnight lows can stress them over time. Pushing part of that issue with the overnight temperatures is an increasing amount of moisture in the atmosphere. This is a graphic from a paper that is talking about dew points. And a dew point is a measure of how much moisture is in the atmosphere. This is often reported, an air temperature and then a dew point temperature. The higher the dew point temperature, the more moisture there is in the atmosphere. And the gray circles over the whole eastern 2/3 of the country indicate the trend of dew points. More moisture in the atmosphere on a more regular basis. So what we're seeing in a lot of cases is these summertime, as I mentioned, the summertime air temperatures aren't getting as high as frequently, but they're still stressful conditions because you have high temperatures or relatively high temperatures, but along with high dew points. So that leads to high heat index issues. So maybe the absolute temperature isn't that high, but the conditions for humans and livestock are issues out there. That increasing humidity is adding to leaf wetness duration. John talked about cutting hay. That's become a more frequent issue is, we cut hay, but it's hard to get it to dry down. We had some problems, not in this area, in South Dakota a couple of years ago with wheat. They wanted to harvest wheat, but wheat was struggling drying down in August because the dew points were so high. Even though it was mature, it couldn't dry down. So these high moisture contents have a wide set of issues related to this. The changing temperature and winter temperatures are allowing changes in our weed range and infestation. This is a graphic from kudzu that is, the range is increased throughout Ohio, almost all of Ohio, over the last 40 to 50 years. We're seeing, increasing ranges of them and insects. I'll mention insects related here too, that are being impacted because, either they can overwinter somewhere better, or they can, the warmer temperatures allow them to promulgate more quickly. I mentioned insects already. And then the other one for folks who deal with these is this timing of bud break in fruit trees. These warmer winters, while they are more pleasant, they are really a problem for a lot of our perennials, because in some cases, the warmer temperatures allow fruit trees to break dormancy earlier than expected, before the last spring freeze. And we've seen this issue a number of times in the Eastern Corn Belt over the last 10 years or so, which has led to minor damage to major damage, depending on the situation. Problems with pollinators. And then another problem, again, with fruit trees is winter chilling units. These warmer winter temperatures don't allow chill units to accumulate in trees as we go along. Okay. All right, I'll pause here one more time, open it up to any questions anyone has. What weather or climate information would help you make better decisions? What would you like to have that you don't have available? And these include decisions in season or adapting to climate change. We'd like to know what kinds of things you need to help guide us in developing products as we go along. We know there's plenty of need out there, but the more specifics help to guide us, say that this is something that the people could really use. So again, you can add in the chat, you can raise your hand, whichever you want to do. Deborah, I briefly mentioned pollinators. What kind of lag is there between bud break and pollinator visits? And that's, we don't dive into the specifics of it, but we talk about the general issues that, with bud breaks happening before pollinators are available, and that becoming a more of an issue. I would point you to go read the document itself. I didn't do that one, and pollinators are not my background, so I would encourage you to go and look at the pollinator one to talk about that. Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
So this isn't information I need, or would need, but David Brandt was talking the other day about his 30-year no-till program, and lots of cover crops has tremendously increased his infiltration rates. So when he gets these big storms, it's not running off and not creating as much erosion, but just the knowledge that we've got heavier storm events and we need to change our farming practices to cut down on the runoff, the erosion, and also the nutrient leaching. If you've got all soluble nutrients and you get a 3-inch rain, it's all gone down into either the surface water or the water table. So we need to change our practices to deal with the change in climate.
You're right, and the climate issues go hand in hand. You know, soil health has been a big one, and obviously no-till has been supported for a long period of time. All these pieces go together to support climate. And you talk about climate smart soils, protecting our soils, managing our soils are the first climate smart thing we should be doing. And you touched on a lot of those, that we saw this a lot. I mentioned March 2019, we had a monster storm on top of frozen ground and snow that caused a bunch of problems. But no-till people, you know, even up in some of the cold, wet areas, were saying, you know, in a day or two after this, I was back out in the field while the people who were tilling were delayed a long period of time. NRCS and partners take this around a lot of places to show, disturbed soil versus, structured soil. When you put a lot of water onto it, what runs off and what goes in. And it's that, managing those soils and taking care of those soils is the one that we, is one of the things we want people to take away from this. And this is we're going to continue to hear more about this as we go along, especially as we get into carbon sequestration. When you till, you release more carbon also. So this is encouraging people to take those actions. Okay, Deborah, yes, I'm going to go back here quickly and this document is the one that has the one on pollinators. You can do either one of those links. The one on the bottom goes to the National Ag Library. I don't know if I can't copy in presentation mode here, but yes, if you can do a picture and a screenshot of that, or you just search climate indicators for agriculture, it will take you directly to that. And then they'll find the one on pollinators there. Okay, anything else? Any other questions or things that people would like to see? And Heather assured me I had 3 hours to talk, right? As a former academic, I don't like to talk ad nauseum. I like to be able to get to the main points, get them done, and get out of the way, unless people are asking lots of questions. Okay, I'm going to dive into a few tools now. I've asked you what tools you'd like to see. I'm going to give you a few to link to and some things to search along the way. One of them is called the U.S. Climate Resilience Toolkit. This was it is a link to a suite of tools through a lot of different partners, federal and state, for a variety of different things in the Midwest. Some of them are ag, some of them are water, some are related to some other ones. So I'd encourage you to go check that out and see if there's anything that strikes you and you find useful there. We did help to put this. We didn't lead it, but we worked with the federal entity who helped to put this together. Another one that we did work on, and this is one working with the National Drought Mitigation Center. We were trying to deal with drought issues in specialty crops. We can get a lot of input on drought impacts on row crops via collection with USDA NASS, but we don't get a lot of information on specialty crops, and we'd like to know about the impacts related to that. Because there's a product I'm going to show you here in a little bit called the U.S. Drought Monitor. It's a weekly product. Well, I'll wait and talk about that as we go along. And as a product of this project that we did, there was some decision calendars developed for different specialty crops, and about some of the decisions people are making, the timing of those decisions, and the weather, some of the weather and climate issues related to those. And we worked on apples, grapes, and potatoes, and also cranberries. Cranberries up in Wisconsin. So you can check that link out and go have a look at those if you'd like to. A more real-time one that occurs monthly. We partner with, I have a colleague in NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. He and I help lead a monthly webinar. It's the third Thursday of the month. The third Thursday of the month is when NOAA puts its new outlooks out each month. So we have a presentation that talks about current issues and upcoming issues, more seasonally, more monthly and seasonal kinds of things rather than climate change, but climate change does come up. It is free to anyone. You just have to register to get a link to it. If you go to that link at the top, you can sign up for it. It is about an hour long. There's a presentation and an opportunity for people to ask questions. I'm on there to answer ag issues on a pretty regular basis. Well, almost every month I'm there to answer ag issues. And if I'm not there, I have another NOAA colleague who sits in. So it is a combination of a bunch of partners who do this. So it's pretty clear. And we've been doing this for 10 years. It's been a great set of issues, or a great set of webinars. And then on a coming attraction side, we're working on something that, a couple things. One is we're working with partners on state-by-state documents about what climate change means for ag in different states. So there'll be one for Ohio, where we'll be working with Aaron Wilson from Ohio State, who's your assistant state climatologist, and a couple other partners. That's going to be kind of just a document that talks about some of these issues and changing climate that I mentioned, and what that's going to mean for agriculture in the state. So be looking for that. They'll be coming out later this year. We have the first one for Illinois almost done. Will be coming out soon. Ohio should follow soon behind. And then, since you folks are dealing with sustainability, there are several sustainable ag projects funded by USDA NIFA that are working with those. One is led out of Purdue University, who I'm on an advisory group for. So there'll be more things coming out from them. And then we're also working with, again, Dr. Aaron Wilson at Ohio State on a USDA NIFA funded project about connecting the Midwest Climate Hub with Extension, working with Extension in different states, that is being led out of Ohio State. So there'll be more coming through those issues. Okay, I'm going to pause here one more time. Are there any questions that you have at this point? I still have some slides. I can talk a little bit about what's coming up this year if you want those, or we can just do questions and wrap up, and I'll share a couple other things about our website. Great to hear, Sue. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. So are there any specific questions? Yeah, Marty, go ahead.
Oops, sorry about that. And I don't know if you have anything to do with this, but it seems to me like some of our more marginal lands just cannot take production, and they need to be put either into forest or some kind of permanent grass. Will you be involved in like assessing that and making those kinds of recommendations, or is that policy and out of your scope?
You've recognized a very important point. Two things I should have said about the Climate Hub. One, we don't have dollars. We don't give dollars away to anybody. We have no regulatory authority. All we can do is things like this: provide information and encourage adoption of decisions. But that point is one that we are starting to push with people, because there is pushback of, well, we can't take land out of production because we've got to produce all this. Yes, we can take a lot of our land out of production and put it into some sort of perennials. There's interest now with putting with what's called agrivoltaics, where people are putting solar panels in areas. Those would be perfect places for doing solar farms, because the land is in marginal production and is actually worse for some of these water quality issues. So wherever we have that ability, we're going to encourage people to do that. But these are production decisions that people have the landowners can make their decisions. They would probably be more working through NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, is going to have the best opportunity to interact with those people. So.
Well, I think that there are a lot of farmers who have some marginal lands, but they've been farming them for a while and they think they know how to do it. And, maybe it just needs to be pointed out to them that, this just isn't going to work anymore. It worked 100 years ago, 50 years ago, but it's just not going to work anymore. And you need to think about it. And so how are you going to, designate those particular places? And, being from Ohio and watching the algae blooms in Lake Erie not get any better, someone's got to start doing the fact-based analysis of what lands really need to be taken out of row crop production in particular.
Yeah. And what this really is going to end up coming down to is, unfortunately, a lot of the people that are in row crop production, the people they're dealing with are crop advisors, they're personal ones or ones through companies. And we've got to get connected with them and help them encourage people to say, look at analysis, because especially doing precision ag where you're getting mapping of things, it's going to show up pretty clearly. These marginal areas are not going to be, in fact, they're going to be losing money on these areas because they're putting things on them that they're not getting back out of it. So, trying to encourage these people to say, hey, here's another thought. Let's pull this out of production. You don't put anything on there. You don't put any seed. You don't put any fertilizer. You're not going to get yield from it, but you're not going to be putting any money into it either. So we are starting a project to talk with a group of certified crop advisors to see if we can get them engaged in talking more about some of these issues with folks. So there's plenty of work being done trying to encourage it, but again, with policies that are voluntary, we can't enforce them. So it's to try to encourage the voluntary adoption of some of these kinds of things. So it's a great question. Any others? And Steve, about rills and sediment on roads and ditches, we have a different problem somewhat up to our north, where people like to do a lot of tillage in Minnesota. So you see a lot of windblown topsoil, and it makes me ill that we're seeing this kind of thing around. Other questions? Okay, I've got about 5 minutes left. I'm going to bop through these real quickly here. Just a couple things. One, here's the map I was talking about, the U.S. Drought Monitor. It's a weekly product that talks about drought around the country. In Ohio, you don't have any right now. Not even the yellow D0, which is abnormally dry areas. Much of the western U.S. is in very serious problems with drought right now. Still huge coverage of drought. But we like to know issues related to drought when they do occur, because we can provide input to the national map each week to try to make it fit what's going on around the region. The process of spring leaf out, another partner organization called the National Phenology Network. This is the status of the spring leaf out, the colored areas at the bottom. The blue areas, actually, we're behind on spring leaf out a little bit because it's been cold, but you see in Texas and Oklahoma, it's been warm enough that spring leaf out is starting to occur, and that's going to start rapidly moving northward as we're going to have some very warm temperatures coming across the region in the near future here. If you want more forecasts and outlooks, I'm going to show you some products that have great forecast and outlook information. I'm down to my last 3 minutes here, so I'm going to jump through a couple of these really quickly. Again, I'll send these out to anyone who'd like them. This is a 7-day precipitation forecast plot. So that green, or the purplish area over much of Ohio is, 1.5 to 2 inches of precipitation in the next week possible. There's a fairly significant system coming the latter part of next week. I think it's mostly going to be liquid. I haven't looked closely enough to see if we have any snow related to that or not. There is a part of NOAA called the Climate Prediction Center. They do outlooks for 6 to 10 days and 8 to 14 days, and then out to a year in advance. And they do things in the way of temperature and precipitation. So the 8 to 14 days, so this is week 2, the redder areas and mud, the whole US actually is looking at more likely at warmer than average temperatures the following week. This would be February 19th through the 25th. On the precipitation side, a little lower chance for precipitation in Ohio as we're going along there. But what's going to happen is we still have a La Nina, and looking at the seasonal outlook, this is 90 days, February through March, and this will be updated next week, but unlikely to change an awful lot. That green area is more likely to be wetter than average throughout the spring. La Ninas have a high tendency to produce wetter areas in the eastern Corn Belt, and that's more likely going to continue this spring. So prepare to continue to have wetness issues as we're going along here. Okay, and then briefly, this is our hub, or the Midwest Climate Hub website, where we have links to a number of the things I've shown you, and also some of our own products. You could just search Midwest Climate Hub and you'll find it that way too. A couple things I mentioned, we do a product called the Ag Focus Outlook, where we bring together a lot of these pieces and talk about issues related to ag across the region. You can go to a page and you can find that. We update about, or usually at the first of the month. You can also get on our website. I'll show you, or get on our email list. I'll show you where to do that next, so that you can get you can get this sent to you when it comes out, or you can go look at previous ones there if you'd like to. And here's the other part of additional tools and resources. If you go there, you've got a link to another set of our information. You can send us an email to sign up for our newsletter and get on our email list. So anytime we come up with new information or new products, we send out so people get access to that. So that's all linked on our website there. Okay, and it's 1 o'clock right now. I get to my last slide. This is how to get in contact with us, or our coordinator, Lori Nowatzki, via phone or email. Or if you do Twitter, I'm at Dennis Todey on Twitter. Anytime we create something new, we share it on Twitter, or at USDA Climate Hubs if you want to follow the Climate Hubs. We're supposed to finish now, but I would welcome any last questions you have or any last comments. Otherwise, thanks for being here, and I appreciate talking with you today.